Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode of Ramblemancy. Um, tonight we are joined by Spiggs or Anthony from Cypher Unlimited. Welcome. We have completed the collection. We had all you guys individual, or we had all you guys together. Then we had each. Now we've had each of you
Yeah.
individually to kind of have your own time in the spotlight. So
I know how it is. You save the best for last.
yeah, exactly. Well, welcome,
Oh,
Anthony. It's good to have you.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to be talking about we are going to be talking about how to bring your favorite media into your TTRPGs. But before we do that, Freeman, do you have probably a couple things to? Well, actually, we'll save that for the end. We'll save that stuff for the end.
sure.
But for now, just as a quick overview of the week coming up on Wednesday, we have or on Tuesday. Sorry, I keep forgetting that our week starts on Tuesday now.
Yeah.
Tuesday, our Waterdeep Dragon Heist actual play
Yeah.
Into Deep comes back for its second episode. Very excited for that. They are fantastic, and last time we left off on a bit of a backstory cliffhanger for one of the characters, so I'm very excited for that to come back. They're all fantastic, and if you haven't watched them yet, you should, because they are just a joy to watch. They're extremely funny and just a whole group of charismatic people. Then, of course, we'll be back on Wednesday for Infinite Horizon, our Cypher System game set in a homebrew sci-fi and supers universe. Yeah. Anthony, you've never played Cypher, right? You don't know what we're talking about at all. Yeah, no.
Never heard of it.
But yeah, so that'll be back, and then of course we'll be back with this very show, Ramblemancy, next week. Next week's guest will actually be Remy Ripple from some of our old programming. It came from the Loop, so Remy will be back with us to talk about homebrew versus modules, and it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be good to finally have Remy. Patrons, particularly those on the world building tier, we are currently talking about what we're going to do for our monthly Patreon writers room. So keep an eye out for that. We are still trying to figure out what we're going to do, although I think we had a pretty good idea from last time. So, but keep an eye out for the announcements about that. We'll be sending those out in the next few days. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for as far as our programming. So you may have also noticed we don't have John tonight. So John is taking care of some life stuff tonight. But we will do the best that we can without him. So without John to throw under the bus to start us off like I usually do, I think we are going to just start off by saying with a question actually for you, Anthony. So
Sure.
one of the reasons we decided to do this topic is because you're pretty well versed in bringing all kinds of like pulp adventures from your favorite movies and things like that into games. So like, what are some of the things that you have? What are some of the like movies or whatever that you've brought into games, and like, kind of how did you go about doing that?
All right. When you first initially told me this topic, you saw I was like, hey, this is right up my wheelhouse. This is sort of like this is my jam, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
But I'm pretty well known in the cipher sphere as the kooky one shot guy. I've done all sorts of crazy stuff. I love to recreate films from the 70s and 80s
Hmm.
into one shot, and it's twofold. One is I tend to run for a lot of younger players than myself, so it's something that's old hat to me is fresh and new to the audience that I'm running it for.
Yeah.
So I've run John Carpenter's The Thing. I've
Hmm.
run The Warriors, the 1970s gang
Ooh,
film.
nice.
Cool.
I've run Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I run Cowboys versus Aliens. I've run Scooby Doo, of course. I think
Excellent.
everybody's run. I've run Power Rangers.
Nice.
I've run Battle of the Planets. I've run Planet of the Apes. Um, um, or I mashed up the original Godfather film with Zootopia. So
Hmm.
I recreated the Godfather, but everyone played mice, and they were part of a it was called the Vermino family, and I assigned every family of the five New York City families in The Godfather to a different animal species. So we had cockroaches, we had cats, we had pigeons, and I think that went really well. I think one of the reasons why I like and what makes it so successful is you take a known commodity
Mm-hmm.
that might be familiar to some, but you change it enough to still give them the surprise when they sit down and play. Because they might sit down with an initial thought, oh, hey, I seen Honey, I Shrunk the Kids,
Right.
right? But when they actually sit down to play, the intro, like the introductory premise might be the same,
Mm-hmm.
but you change the middle guts of the narrative,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, to still make it enjoyable for them.
Yeah. So when you adapt these things,
Yeah.
you do like do you try to do it as like generally like a full adaptation of the actual film, or is it more just in terms of setting?
I try to keep the theme,
Mm-hmm.
pace, and tone of the original whatever medium whatever film I'm trying to adapt, and I try to add at least two or three scenes from the movie or the TV show to give them, hey, I remember this, but you change the plot just enough that it's original and it's
Right.
not like I'm replaying a movie, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. 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 That's cool. I haven't been since you said it. I haven't been able to shake the idea of like of a Scooby Doo one
Hmm.
shot. That in my mind is like that would be so fun and just
That would
wacky.
be.
Like,
Yeah, we've actually run Scooby Doo several times, and
huh.
every time we ran it, right, we kept the theme of, hey, I'm gonna play a Thelma like character, or I'm gonna play a Shaggy like character,
Hmm.
but we kind of like changed the roles a little,
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't initially like the Shaggy character was the you know the female version of
Oh,
Shaggy,
okay.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so to make it just different enough and familiar enough, but still have its own elements of originality.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking over here at chat. I saw some jolly old Nicholas cats. You say, not like that, not like
No.
that. Although now I'm trying to think of like how horrifying you could make a one shot that was just cats, right? Like just the movie Cat, like the musical. That would be.
I would love to. There's a ton of musical. I've always my favorite film of all time is West Side Story,
Hmm.
so I would love
Mhm.
to recreate West Side Story in a one shot.
Yeah, that would be really
Yeah.
interesting. That one itself would actually be a really really good like that would be a good setting for like an RPG because there's tons of you
Would.
got the conflict built in. You've
Hmm.
got like all the central tensions and all that stuff. It's all built into to the setting. That's actually really cool. This is a dangerous topic because now my GM brain is going like, okay, what could I do? And I do not have time to do any of these things.
I would just like to add like 2 points that I
Hmm.
think are very relevant to this
Yeah, yeah.
discussion. One is with adaptations, you have to find the right system.
Hmm.
I would lean towards more generic systems,
Yeah.
your Cypher systems, your Savage Worlds, your Fates, because when you take a system that isn't inherently designed to cover multiple bases like films are, films
Yeah.
tend to have multiple genres or
Hmm.
concepts of different genres mashed into a film, right? So
Hmm.
when you take a system like a D&D, a Pathfinder, you might not be able to capture the full
Yeah.
feel of whatever film you're trying to recreate. So I would go towards more a generic system. Cipher system for me most
Yeah.
Yeah.
likely, but Fate will work just as well. GURP, Savage Worlds, whichever one you choose. And the other point I would like to make is that it's very important. It's okay to adapt something, but make sure that you add some originality to it, because if the person is familiar with the film, they might not enjoy it as much as you are as
Yeah.
the GM retelling the story.
Yeah, and so like that's actually a good like for me a good segue into kind of a related topic, which is playing or running TTRPGs in like an established setting. like in an established property like Star Trek Adventures or
Hmm.
like the Fallout game from Modifius. Is it Modifius? Yeah. And like uh, various others, the Star Wars system, right? Like running games in established properties. And I think that's a really important point because I think one of the things that a lot of people find intimidating about those is right like the Trekkies or like this like the Star Wars fans who come and be like, no, it didn't go like that. It didn't go down like
Right.
that. Like right. So like worried about being how do they put it on Shield of Tomorrow? Trek checked.
Huh.
Right? Like
Yeah.
and so like I think so what you said and think that's I think a very important point, which you got to put like you got to set an expectation early on that like this is not going to necessarily be what you think it's going to be.
It's funny you mentioned Star Wars because I don't know if you ever seen on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I recreated my version of Star Wars. It
Hmm.
was called Cleanup in Sector
Mhm.
57,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everyone played mundane jobs on the Death Star the day the rebels attacked.
Mhm.
So
Well, that's
we had
cool.
we had a Wookiee barber, we had a information droid, we had the head of HR, we had a
Oh.
janitor, and in the beginning of the stream, I flat out said it. I say, hey, if you here for canon and you here for historically accurate Star Wars,
Yeah.
this isn't the show for you,
Right.
dude. This
Oh, I
is
love that.
Monty Python meets Star
Yes.
Wars, and whatever the player says, that becomes canon for the moment. So we had some really hilarious, scenes, and if someone was a huge Star Wars fan, they must have been like, "What the hell are these jerks doing?" But
I think
What?
that's really
it
cool.
was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the Death Star is we don't really get enough information. At least I don't know a whole lot about it. So there's just so much to fill there, and of course the Death Star is giant. So there's
Uh,
so many little
all,
stories that could happen anywhere on there.
all I gotta say is we have a scene where the Wookiee barber is forced to give Darth Vader a haircut,
Ah,
and Darth Vader gave him an image of he wanted to look like Brad Pitt from Troy. So if you ever seen how Darth Vader, he literally has the Homer Simpson 2 strands of hair.
Yeah.
So it was pretty hilarious. So
That's
if
incredible.
you get a chance, check it out. It's on the Cypher Unlimited YouTube. It's called Cleanup in Sector 57.
That's incredible. I love that. Every time you guys talk about it, I'm like, yes, absolutely. That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of Star Wars we need. We
Yep.
need Star Wars to start taking itself a little less seriously.
And I think you brought up a good point when you said
Mhm.
you could adapt something without taking anything from
Yeah.
the actual material.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You could just adapt the tone and feel of something. You know, you could take your favorite horror movie and just recreate the feel, not recreate the story at all.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you know, like a lot of the stuff that Jordan Peele does, his is very emotional.
Mhm.
It strikes a certain feeling. You know, you could create your own game and just use the feeling and the pacing as your inspiration, not necessarily the material.
Yeah, that's very true, and I think that's like as a GM, I think that's kind of more my favorite approach is just borrowing elements, whether it's a monster or whether it's themes or even just like the pacing, like you said, setup or pacing. Like that's what I like to do. I like to
Hmm.
take weird little bits from things that I like and just mash them together and see what comes out. That's
Hmm.
my favorite thing. Um, uh,
You ever play in a game and finish a scene and say, "Hey, this scene reminded me of this," even though it had nothing to do with,
right.
like, the material had nothing to do with it just gave me
Yeah.
the feel of The Shining, or it
Mm-hmm.
gave me the
Hmm.
feel of Friends. Whatever you choose.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there was a moment like that recently. I'm trying to remember in well, recently being relative, but in our home game, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
I was trying to think too. I swear there was a moment that felt like Helm's Deep, like the siege of Helm's
Oh,
Deep.
was it when we were doing that like kind of siege, the demon siege? Was it
I
that?
think it might have been
I
that
think it was
one.
that. Yeah, there was like this
Because I
whole
like broke through the wall and we had to like
yep.
bear. Yeah, that was definitely that one.
Yeah, we had this whole like multi session uh run in our home game of like a siege that I was basically just running it as several encounters. And like occasionally I would give them like a short rest in between, and I'd or at least I'd give them the option of doing that, with of course the chance that it might not finish or it might not work, something might happen before they finished their resting and that kind of stuff. Basically just ran it that way. But yeah, essentially like the end of it kind of felt like Helm's Deep. I think that might be what I was thinking of.
Yeah. There were some similarities for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, playing a barbarian in that game, that was like a playing field.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
That's very cool as a player because you get to you have something to feed off of. You have something to like like, okay, I see where the GM is going. I see what the GM is trying to recreate.
Yeah.
And a good player is going to recognize that and move his narrative into that direction.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I was just thinking as you were talking is that I think it's extremely common. In fact, I'm struggling to come up with any situation where that wouldn't be the case, where a GM creating like their own, like creating like a homebrew campaign, basically nothing taken out of a module or whatever, doesn't like draw from their favorite pieces of media to plan a scene, right? Like I can't imagine that there's ever a situation where somebody doesn't do that, right? I mean,
maybe if William Shakespeare was, was a GM.
Now that would be a campaign that I would like to play.
I would like to think that that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like any GM. Well, let me rephrase that. Not any GM, but me personally, as a GM, I'm going to try to present what I find enjoyable, and then hope that my players enjoy the same concepts that I do. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's all you can do is put out what you think is cool and hope that they also think it's cool.
Exactly. Well, and that's I feel like that's in many ways how I like grew as a GM, right? Like you start with one thing. You're like, I really like this scene from this movie. How do I bring that into my game? And then you just try it. And then your players like maybe they connect with it. Maybe they don't. Maybe it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to. And you go, okay, so what went wrong? How do I what specific part of this went wrong, and how do I fix that? What worked, what didn't? And then next time you try it again, but you change that one thing, and then it works, and then you add that to your tool belt, right? You add that technique or whatever to your tool belt, and then you move on, right? Like that kind of thing. So like I feel like that's in large measure how I grew as a GM, is trying to recreate those moments.
And you can even go a step further. As you grow as a GM, you can recognize what's going wrong mid-scene. And the better GMs learn to auto-correct during a scene, which is very hard to do, and everyone should strive to get to that stage. But it is a good way to like train your mind to go, hey, like I tend to run a lot of comedy games, so I know when a joke isn't landing. Like the whole table gets quiet, and you're like, okay, it's time to move on. Let's do something else. This isn't working. It's
look, a random encounter over there. Oh, look, suddenly orcs show up. What?
Look at that something completely different over there.
Yeah.
It's like bombing like a stand-up comedian, and that works for everything. It's not only comedy, but that works for serious horror, sci-fi, whatever. You could tell when something, especially in person, you could definitely tell.
Oh yeah.
When people's eyes start going down, looking into their character sheet. Like so, it's just about reading the table and learning how to autocorrect.
Yeah, definitely. So on that subject, because I'm sure it's happened to you. What are some of your adaptations that haven't quite landed as well? Do you have any?
I have a ton.
Yeah,
I have a ton. I find it funny when I hear like GMs either like writing articles and they always talk about their triumphs, when I think it's more important to teach someone from failure.
Yeah.
Personally, I learn way more from bombed games than I ever do from a successful game.
Yeah.
Right. And I've had a ton of failures. I one off the top of my head is I was running My Hero Academia, and I my problem is that I had mapped out the initial first game, and you guys know I'm not much of a planner. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I write I literally have a napkin that I write my ideas on, and then I'm ready to go.
Listen,
I'm pretty
these are
confident
my
in my
notes from
improv
last
skills.
session. These are my notes from last session. You can see how very little is on them. So yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
So I think the first session went well, but I didn't fully plan out, like it was supposed to be a 3-session arc, and I didn't fully plan out where the characters wanted to go. So it went from like My Hero Academia to like Fast Time at Richmond High, or like some
Yeah,
meatballs,
yeah.
some like some really like comedy show, and it wasn't what I wanted. I think that was one of my biggest bombs. You
Yeah.
know, and I not to throw Al under the bus, but I have an Al story that's hilarious that I always tell.
Mhm.
Al was adapting Dragon Ball Z, right? But he was mixing Star Trek with Dragon Ball Z,
Interesting.
and
All right.
the concept was awesome. And I was playing an android in this game, right? And the problem is that we advertised it with members on the server
Mhm.
that, one, we didn't know, and two, we didn't know their age. They were very young. Like I'm talking 15 to 16, right? And there was a scene where I was trying to recreate a Star Trek episode where everyone on this planet didn't know their inhibitions. So it was sort of like, you know, like free love type,
Yeah.
but it wasn't in a sexual nature. It was more like, like everyone touched. It was everyone touched each other. They didn't recognize male or female. It was everyone loved each other.
Hmm.
These kids took it to the point where it was, we're gonna have an orgy. Right?
Oh no.
Al did not know how to. It was early in Al staging a GM, so he didn't know how to nip it. Like me, I would have nipped it in the bud immediately. Like, no,
Yeah.
we're not going there. So he let it go on and on and on
Oh,
to the
no.
point.
Oh my.
And I was playing an android, so I was trying to help him. So I in character, I said, no, we can't do this. We got to go somewhere else. They turned me off. Like they literally, like since I was an android, they shut me off.
Wow.
It was whole. I had to send out a message out of game, like, hey, this is uncomfortable. I'm sure the other 3 people in this game do not want to, act out an orgy.
Right.
So we wind up getting the control of the situation, but it was hilarious.
Oh my god.
It was definitely a learning experience.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very uncomfortable learning experience.
Wow.
That's wow.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we had to talk with them because I don't think they were doing it maliciously.
Sure,
I
yeah.
think they were just young. And what's funny to you at 15 isn't necessarily what's funny to you at 25.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was very sophisticated and at 15, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've blocked most of those years out.
But it was definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Now I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know that I've had any like major bombs as far as that goes, but mostly it's just been like most of it has been just stuff that I've tried that like I'm like there's this cool scene that I have in my head and I tried it and it just wasn't landing, and like where like the players weren't like really engaging with it, or when I brought it to it seemed like a good idea at the time. This is the classic one. It seems like a good idea at the time you thought of it, but then you bring it to the table and in practice you realize as you're doing it there's not a whole lot for the players to really engage with.
Right.
Like that's the one that happens to me all the time.
But that doesn't necessarily mean the scene is bad.
Sure. No.
There's multiple factors to that. It could be the wrong group.
Right.
It could be your delivery of the initial setup of the scene wasn't correct or accurate.
Yeah, it's usually that one. It's usually that. It's that I'm like, I realized I have left out important details, or like where I'll say stuff like, where I'll do the setup but not enough setup, and then I'll just be like, what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't.
Or what I've done is the exact opposite. I set it up too much and it's almost information overload. You give players too many options and then they get frozen with the, oh, wait a minute. what was the guy with the blue? What did the guy with the blue shirt say?
Yeah.
How many? What direct? I have 8 different directions to go. Now I don't know where to go.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it could be the other way around as well. That's why I tend to under prep, because I think you get a lot less mistakes from under prepping than over prepping. When you over prep, your mind is thinking in 100 different directions, and you almost inherently start railroading your own narratives without even knowing it.
Yeah. Sorry, Freeman, you look like you had like something.
So a balance. So you have to strike a balance. Not really. I was just thinking you have to strike a balance then.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the fun part, is finding that balance.
Yeah, and it's like that's the cool thing, is that it's different for everybody, right? Like I know it came from the Loop, our Tales from the Loop game. Caitlin, I like to make fun of her for this because I think it's very funny. Because this is the opposite of how I work. But Caitlin wrote out like 26 pages of notes for 4 episodes, 4 sessions. She wrote out 26 pages of notes. And like it's not like she doesn't like write it down like this is what will happen from moment to moment. It's just more like stuff for her to remember in the moment, and just sort of like things to mention and stuff like that.
That was me initially.
Yeah.
That was how I started. But I came from first edition D&D, where you was figuring out the innkeeper's great grandmother's name and what line of succession the king was from 2 continents away.
Taking the George R.R. Martin approach to tabletop RPG.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. Geek Outs. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Geek Out said.
I'm sorry.
This is actually a very good point, and I'm very much like this as well. But Geek Out says, if I write paragraphs of descriptive information or descriptive or informative text, I want to read it all, and when I improv most of it, I'm more in the moment. I still make bullet point notes for important info, and I agree. Like this was the same thing with me for presentations in college, right? Like when I do presentations, if I scripted it out for myself, I was so much more focused on keeping to the script than I was about like actually doing the presentation. And so in the end, what I decided was that, you know what, I'm just gonna know what I'm talking about, and I'm just gonna go up there and talk until they make me stop, and that was usually more successful. But Al, thanks so much for giving.
Hey, Al just joined the chat. Al.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I told you an orgy story.
Thanks so much for gifting that sub, Al. Welcome. Yeah. A very
orgy, not origin.
Yeah, that is. That I'm not sure I would have known how to handle that situation either.
Yeah, it was awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the most awkward situation you guys ever had in a game?
Ooh.
Huh. It's a good question, and I don't think I can think of one right off the top of my head.
I mean,
because like there's little things that happen in game where like the party is a little split on making a decision, and so are the players. And so an action happens.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It maybe that time that my character in our home game, the barbarian, went to decapitate a vampire, and then our other character, sorcerer, like, well, no, that doesn't count because I actually that was actually cool. I think that was really cool. It wasn't awkward.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There have been times when I've had players that didn't quite mesh in the group, and that kind of brought, like Freeman said, those like little awkward moments. I'm not sure I've ever had like something quite like a big awkward moment, you know? Yeah. I'm not sure I've ever had that.
I was in a con game once where a guy's character died and he flipped the table over.
Oh my god.
He rage quit.
I was like, oh, I was a player. I was like, oh, what the hell's going on?
Ooh. Oh no.
That's
taking it a little seriously. And it was a con. Like, why are you like, it's not like your character is gonna, you're taking your character past this 1 4-hour session.
Yeah. Oh my god. That's
wow.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, I can think of a bad experience, but it wasn't, and it was due to my own like lack of experience, but it wasn't. It was kind of awkward, but it was more like everybody was mad, which was a situation like back in our we were playing. We used to play in high school, and there was like I'm in the game. I mentioned to the players that there was like this evil dragon nearby, this like ancient evil dragon, and they went to go they were supposed to go talk to it and talk to the dragon and like do something, and they decided that they wanted to kill the dragon. And I'm like, okay, well, you guys are like level 2, so, and they're like, yeah, I know, we're gonna do it anyway. I'm like, okay, fine, but also I'm not sure you heard me correctly, but you're level 2. And they're like, nope, we're gonna do it. I was like, okay. And then I like had this happen, and of course it crushed them, and they were mad about it, and they got really upset, and basically like bullied me into allowing something just completely bullshit to like happen so that they won somehow. And yeah, it was just a bad situation all around. But yeah,
Yikes.
it taught me the importance of saying no to your players.
Yeah.
Because if you say yes to your players all the time, somebody, not every player is going to do this, but eventually you're going to have a player that decides that they're going to take advantage of that and just push to a point where nobody's having fun.
Yeah, you get that player that wants to win that role playing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, I want to win.
Yeah, exactly. And just like, hey, maybe it doesn't work like that.
There's little wins, but it's mostly cooperative.
Yeah. I saw some people talking about their moments. Rose says, I had an encounter fall flat when the players got the drop on a bunch of cowards who surrendered. My players wanted combat, but I got distracted and rewarded them by de-escalating. Yeah, that can definitely happen. I am very guilty of that. I am very guilty of that kind of thing because I don't know if y'all have noticed, but especially in Cypher, because Cypher enables this in me, I tend to shy away from combat. Cypher enables me, and that's not always a good thing because sometimes the players just want to fight something. And so that is a very common thing that I experience for sure.
You should take in mind, it's like combat runs so fast anyway, it's rather quick.
Yeah.
That even if you're not a non-combat GM, it's still only 15 minutes of your game. If you do 4 rounds, it's not going to be more than 15 minutes.
Yeah,
definitely. So you should take that into account. Like a lot of people think of combat, they think of D20 based combat where, okay, I'm gonna break out the map and we're gonna spend the next hour and 20 minutes doing this one scene. And Cypher, you can have 50 people fighting and it's still not going to take more than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
True.
Let's see. Geek Out says it was a random pickup game on Roll20, and this player wanted to play a Sphinx-like cat person, and they had to put emphasis on that their character was naked. Hey, Geek Outs, my character's naked. LOL. It was an easy decision to walk away from that game.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, that's.
Hey, did I remind you my character was naked?
Like.
All right, everybody, roll initiative. All right, let's see. I rolled 9 plus 15. That equals my character's naked, and Rose also says another time I ran that encounter. The players cut off the enemy hacker's finger to get intel, which was a bit much for me. Yeah, see, that's the thing. We talked about this a little bit last episode of Ramblemancy with Scriv, when we're talking about how it's just as important for the GMs to have their boundaries as part of their games as well, because if a player is uncomfortable, that's already a bad thing. It is so much, I think, not worse, but like has greater more negative implications for the game as a whole if the GM is uncomfortable and doesn't do anything about it, because then it ripples out, because then everybody feels it. And yeah, like it's just very important to have those things set up. And
there's nothing worse than a passive aggressive GM, because it changes everything.
I have been on both sides of that one. I have been the passive aggressive GM, and I've been the player on the receiving end of the passive aggressive GM, and it's not good either way. It's you feel bad about it when you're doing it. It feels gross, and everything just feels bad.
Sometimes you don't even recognize that you're the passive aggressive one until after the fact.
Oh, it's the worst feeling. It's the worst feeling. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I could have handled that better.
Yeah, it happens right at that moment, right when you're about to fall asleep, and then your eyes like go wide, and you remember that moment 4 years
Yeah.
ago.
Oh gosh. Koala says getting adjusted to different systems is very weird. Like when I was playing Cypher for the first time, I was doing like 6 damage per hit, and that was like a bunch with a bunch of effects. And I originally thought that was uh bad, but no, that's actually really good. Yeah, that's like a heavy weapon equivalent. That's a heavy weapon in Cypher.
Yeah.
That's like you. It's like a missile launcher or something.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you guys. I know if you've seen. You know our philosophy. It's a
Hmm.
like it's a different mindset. You have to shift, and this is not just Cypher System. It's with all narrative games. You have to stray away from the concept of I need a mechanical explanation for everything that's going
Hmm.
on, and and know that the narrative is paramount in basically all the narrative style games. So don't worry about the numbers.
Yeah.
Like don't worry about the damage output or the stats, the ability scores, because that doesn't really matter in games like Cypher. In games like Cypher, it's more about moving the narrative forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And I that's so that actually brings me to another thing, which I was thinking about this. So let's actually talk about Cipher in the context of like
Woohoo!
bringing like our favorite media into
Hmm.
TTRPGs, because I know these
Absolutely.
are like both like these are conversations that we've had both on and off stream about like bringing stuff specifically in Cipher. Like I know Dean has talked extensively about how he's made various Marvel characters in the Cipher system and like all these things and adapting characters to Cipher. Um, but I want to talk specifically about like the system and like what exists within the system that helps you bring like movies and stuff like that into your games.
I From a GM
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, I think the biggest advantage to Cypher system in particular would be two things. One is the lack of a stat sheet for NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
You basically set a target number, and there's not a coded, like if I want to give a character an ability, there's not a coded mechanic involved in giving that to a specific character. So if you want to recreate, like just pick any movie, anybody in chat could pick something. Like we say we want to recreate Top Gun, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we'll use Top Gun as an
Sure.
example.
Yep.
So you want your character to be able to withstand alcohol, fly, have high endurance in flying, and is quick witted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are all skills. You just drinks a lot could be a skill,
Right. Yeah.
you know. Pilot reflexes is
Hmm.
another skill, and quick witted are all skills that you could give this
Mm-hmm.
character, and it doesn't break the game whatsoever.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when you have a modular nature in the actual design framework of the system, it's a lot easier to recreate existing characters from films than it is in other systems where you have to follow a coded design of character creation, right? So
Yeah.
that would be one example, and another example is the GM intrusion mechanic. With the GM intrusion mechanic, you could insert the scenes whenever the hell you want, because guess what, here's an XP, and now the birds are attacking you while you're in the phone booth, Alfred Hitchcock style.
Oh my gosh,
you, you,
yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
Either you take this XP and give it to somebody else, and it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I was gonna say too. Is the fact that like on the GM side of things, not only are there the GM intrusions, but like there's also so many ways that you can just like sort of tweak what's happening to fit what you need, because it's designed in such a it's got a very like open-ended design where like the mechanics they work in there's a specific way that they work, but they're not limiting in the way that they work, right? Like they are broadly applicable, right? Like you've got mechanics in like in D&D for instance for like grappling, right? but you couldn't apply those same rules to like something that's completely unrelated. Like you couldn't do that. It would be like, okay, this is specifically for like opposed checks in D&D, or specifically for moments where you are directly contesting with somebody else. That's not really a system that you can put into anything where you're, outside of that. Whereas in Cypher, especially on the part of the players, where the players say, I want to do this thing, but I'm not sure this ability works that way. You can say, well, just spend a little bit more from your pool, or maybe even just like spend an XP or something like that. Like however you want to do it. And there's so many different ways that you can get to that.
It's funny you say D&D, because Cypher system, the concepts at its base, right? Its core concepts comes from D&D. It comes from first edition D&D. It's rulings over rules was a Gary Gygax concept. It's just that as the system advanced and progressed over the years, they strayed away from the rulings over rules, and they said, "Screw the rulings. We're gonna give you a rule for everything." Right?
Yeah.
So, but Monty didn't reinvent the wheel. He just took the initial OSR, Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson concepts, and he applied it to a modern narrative game. That's all he did. Cypher is more of it's rulings over rules, and there's advantages and disadvantages, of course, for having a system like that, because every table is going to be different, because it's going to be contingent on how fair a GM is, right, or how knowledgeable a GM is in running a table. But the advantages of that is that you could create a lot more narrative scenes when the GM has the freedom and flexibility to allow the players to attempt stuff that isn't confined by mechanics. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of that very thing is I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at about like what's helpful about the Cypher system, of bringing in like your movie, because like it's hard to recreate a film in a system that is very constrained by rules instead of rulings.
Hey, it's hard to recreate a fantasy film in D&D.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
If you look at the fantasy films, right, like all the great characters that you love in fantasy films, they like dual crass out the asshole.
True.
You know what I mean? Like Legolas is like Legolas is like 4 different classes.
That's true. I thought about that.
D&D. He's not just a ranger.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He's like, I could see elements of fighter in there. Throw some monk in, like definitely some rogue.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
He has like 5 levels and everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah. But
so I just think Cypher System and Fate falls under this category as well, is that they cinematic games. They almost designed to be a film. Like the whole, like we didn't, when you asked me, I just thought about this, but when you asked me about what makes Cypher System good for adaptation, I would also say effort and edge is another example of what makes it cinematic. And if it's something that's cinematic, then it's easier to adapt films to, because effort, I view effort and edge as that moment in a film where the character goes above and beyond what their normal capabilities are. And you see that, what's that, Die Hard? He does that 4 or 5 times in every film. You know what I mean? There's that one moment where your character has to accomplish this, so they apply the effort. And you see that in movies all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That one scene where the character just goes above and beyond what they're capable of. And makes the players feel special.
Yeah. Definitely, I can absolutely see that. That's Sorry, I'm like now running through my head of like all these different times where I've seen that exact thing happen in a movie, and that's.
Yep.
Sorry, GM brain going again.
I mean, that happens in a ton of movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it happens if you run any action movie or any horror film. The hero at the end goes above and beyond, to kill whatever the big bad is.
Yeah.
They're exhausting all their effort They're spending their edge. They're putting, everything they got into this one action.
Mm-hmm.
And you're capable of doing that in the Cypher system. You're capable of doing that in Fate.
Yeah.
You're not capable of doing that in a lot of other systems.
Yeah, and
you might be able to in Savage Worlds.
Yeah. I saw Rose basically is kind of rephrasing also what I was saying, and I agree with this, which is I love when a system gives me a mechanical way to bend the rules in favor of drama or creativity, and that's absolutely very, very true. I love that as well. Like that's one of the things that I love. Like as recently, I was kind of like rereading the kind of the GM section in the Cypher book. And every once in a while I'll come back to it and give myself a refresher on like some of the stuff in there. But one of the things I like about it is, well, two things mainly that I like about that section. One, I like the fact that it's written as if like Monty's just sitting here just like talking to me. That's my favorite part about it. And the other thing is that there are specific codified ways of just totally ignoring the rules. They're like, here's the rule that like you can do whatever you want. You don't need permission. But in case you're the sort of person who does need permission, I'm giving it to you with this rule that says you don't have to play by the rules.
It's funny. We have rule discussions all the time on our server. We got 4,000 people on the server, so obviously there's going to be a difference in opinions. But, I always crack up and find it funny when someone says, hey, but the rule says this. You should always refer to them. Well, the rule also says if this doesn't make sense for your game, ignore it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for my game, so I choose to ignore it.
Right. See, like I feel like
those... just to go what Rose said, Cypher system gives you that with the player intrusion mechanic.
That's true. Yes, absolutely. A thing that I think the Infinite Horizon crew forgets that they can do. They forget about that a lot. But yeah, no, I think that the discussion about rules when it comes to Cypher system is usually more productive when it's framed like what tools does the book have that would allow me to do this or that kind of thing, right? Rather than like, well, what does the rule say? What's allowed, right? It's more a conversation about, well, what tools do I have? What tools am I given? And I think that's in a lot of ways a more freeing discussion.
Yeah. When it's funny you say that, like when someone asks what is allowed, I always reference it as let's backtrack a little and let's talk about what isn't allowed, because there's more stuff that's allowed that isn't. So you know what I mean? It's taking the mindset of it's freeing. You could attempt everything. You might not necessarily be good, but nothing's off the table. If you look at it, that's the whole reason they have a vague skill set, is because anyone could attempt any skill. It's just whether you're competent in or not. If you're competent in the skill or not. But you could attempt it.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you're going to be good at it. Like I'm not a pilot, but I could try to fly a plane. Doesn't mean I'm gonna get it off the ground.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's true. And that's actually a thing that
go ahead.
A
lot of other systems just doesn't let you do it.
Yeah. I think
Cypher isn't that style of system.
There was something like, and I don't know anybody who played this way, and I could be wrong about this, but I vaguely recall that in like first edition Pathfinder and 3.5 D&D, like if you weren't trained in a skill or something like that, like you couldn't use it or something like that. I don't know. There was I feel like that's
that's pretty much.
Yeah, like I vaguely recall that. Nobody that I knew
that's
played
how it
that
was.
way. Yeah.
If you wasn't trained in the skill, you couldn't do it.
Yeah, nobody that I know played it that way. Like everybody always allowed like you to attempt a skill even if you didn't have any points in it or like didn't have any like training.
I mean, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah. But no, like I don't know anybody who played it that way. There was always a like everybody always sort of like house ruled that you could do it.
There's nothing wrong with that though. I mean, it's different, different strokes for different folks. There's sometimes that I want to play a mechanic heavy game. I want to min max. I want to build.
Yeah.
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 Huh.
Yeah, there that Jason C Art is saying oh, did we lose? Oh, okay.
Hey, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I don't
uh
know what happened.
that's all right. Like Jason C Art is saying, like confirming hell in 1E, if you were a wizard you couldn't lift a sword. Yeah, exactly, that kind of thing.
Mm.
um yeah, that's I'm trying to think of like all the systems that I've played and trying to remember how many of them will just straight up not let you do something if you don't have the mechanic, like if it's not allowed mechanically. I don't think it's many that I've played recently.
There's
Yeah.
also the other side of the argument. Like I've heard people say that narrative games aren't role playing games.
Hmm.
They'll say it's a storytelling game, right? That there's not enough rules or mechanics to justify it being a role playing game.
Huh.
Which is a
Well,
funny
okay.
take on. I'm not saying I agree with it because
Yeah.
obviously I'm a system guy, but
Mhm.
I've heard that argument before.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's kind of a weird one. That seems like semantics to me.
Mhm.
Mm,
That seems like just splitting hairs, really.
mm,
But yeah, I mean, like I guess I see the argument, but I don't know. To me, it just seems like different like types of role playing games.
mm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
And you could take a rules heavy role playing game and simplify it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at Critical Role, they probably use 1/3 of the rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
True.
you could take I've seen people do it on our server. You could take a simplified cipher system and add a bunch of unneeded rules
Mm-hmm.
and crunchify it,
Hmm.
make
Yeah.
it mechanically heavy. It's not a game that I would personally like. I don't personally think I would enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
but you are capable of doing it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because I was thinking about this in terms of like modifying. I feel like whenever I like homebrew something in 5e, whether it's an item or like house rule something, I'm always finding myself double checking to go like, okay, does this fuck up anything else?
Yeah.
Like, is this gonna like change how something else works? Is this gonna make this pointless? Right, like that kind of thing.
it's a, it's almost like the butterfly effect, right? You do one thing
Yeah.
and it changes 8 other
and
things.
and like for me coming to Cypher after being like very heavily immersed in like first Pathfinder and then 5e, coming the big thing for me to get my head around that I had to like completely just try to get past was the idea that basically there's nothing you can do in Cypher that will ruin any other part of the game. Like there's nothing you can really do because it's not built to be so like high performance, like min max. I mean, you can min max in kind of in Cypher, but it's not like built to be like this is the optimal way and this is the like there's no such thing as that in Cypher.
Yeah, Cypher's modular. It's plug and play.
Mm-hmm.
So you essentially it's like a Lego set. If you take out a block, it doesn't destroy the entire Lego set.
Yeah.
You could put a different block in. So it's pretty much what you said. If you want your characters to be superpower, guess what? Give them power shifts.
Yeah.
If you want them to be really superpower, give them 6 power shifts.
Yeah.
It doesn't. If you want the characters to have be more fleshed out around it, give them 2 foci
Mm-hmm.
or give them 2 types. It doesn't, as long as you spread it out equally across all the characters, it doesn't break anything.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
that's kind of one of the things we learned pretty quickly because like Freeman, I think your out of everybody, your character in Infinite Horizon, I could be wrong, but I think your character in Infinite Horizon is one of the only ones that has taken stuff from other types, not just like flavors, right?
Yeah, from yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
I
So
can't remember what off the top of my
yeah,
head.
and because I remember we were looking at this, and like there was a moment where I was like, all right, how do we make Freeman's character concept work within the bounds of the character type? And then I found myself all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, I don't need to do that. It doesn't matter. Like I
Yeah.
could just
Yeah.
grab something from another type, and who cares? Like it's not
Yeah,
going to
as
change
long
anything.
as it's the same tier,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was adept.
Adept. That's right. Yeah. Because you're an explorer, and you took a
Mhm.
couple of adept abilities.
I just took the adaptation, which is super cool because
Right.
That's what his power is almost all about,
Yeah.
is being able to adapt to stressful environmental things or any kind of stress really on the body
Yeah.
or mind.
From a design aesthetic, I love to mess around with the power shifts. Like a lot of people look at the power shifts and only follow what's in the book.
Right.
But I like to say, hey, if I want to, I ran a game called Burning the Red Lotus Temple, and it was a kung fu, wuxia inspired, the old Run Shaw kung fu films. So in those films, everybody could jump 20 feet tall.
Right.
Everybody could flip endlessly for no reason, like they flip out of a room. So we gave them power shifts to simulate those abilities. So there's nothing in the book that says power shifts does this, but hey, every character has 2 power shifts. So you want to be the guy that flips 20 times, one of your power shifts is the ability to flip 20 times in a row.
Yeah.
And somebody else might use their power shift for damage, like a mechanical benefit, and somebody might use it for a narrative benefit. It doesn't matter. Either way, the person's going to be happy with how their character turned out.
Yeah. And that's interesting, because like that's me, right? Like the person that you're describing who's like going by like what the power shift says it can do, that's me, but only because I'm not familiar enough with them to be able to go like, all right, what actual purpose does this serve and how can I change it from what's here? But like thinking about it, I'm like, okay, now after hearing you talk, I'm like, oh yeah, there's so many ways that I could use that mechanic in like different ways.
I'll give you a perfect example. In Dean's game, I played this character based. This is actually fits into our story.
Yeah.
You ever seen the show Family Ties?
A little bit, not much of it, but yeah.
You remember Alex Keaton? He was the son. He was a young Republican.
Yeah,
he was a 15-year-old conservative. You know what I mean? So he was like a 60-year-old, man in a 15-year-old's body. Like he had all these conservative. So I played a character based on him, right? And he was a superhero. And his character was called the Heater, right? He was a young Republican conservative, but he had the ability to throw baseballs like 300 miles an hour, right? So he could whip through walls with a baseball, right? So I wanted the ability to throw a baseball and have it split and hit multiple targets. There's nothing in the book that allows you to do that. So me and Dean just sat down and he said, okay, let's use a power. For every power shift you use, I'll give you 2 more balls. So I wasted 2 power shifts, and I was able to throw a baseball and have it split and hit 5 different targets at one time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's not overpowered. It's not game breaking. You know what I mean? And I'm actually weakening my character when I could have added that power shift in strength or in dexterity. But it's something that's cool, and I had a niche ability that, like I was throwing freaking baseballs. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like I was overpowered. So you can utilize power shifts in so many ways that people don't realize. When we run Star Wars, we use power shifts to, simulate the Force. Like we were using it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Sorry, for me, you look like you had something to say.
I think no, it went. It went. It went away.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that they only as good. I mean, the power shifts are only as limited as your imagination is.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about it now, and I'm just thinking in terms of like, you could also do a thing where you could exchange a power shift to take on like an ability that you wouldn't normally get or something like that. Yeah. You could do that kind of thing. I think in Infinite Horizon, one of the ways that we did it is we actually had, with Olivia, she has a thing like one of the speaker abilities, that kind of basically like, I forget what it's called, but it's one of the like the early speaker abilities that allows you to sort of like mesmerize another character. She has a power shift in that I think allows her to target multiple people. And so we took the power shift and sort of applied it in that way. So we've done it a few times, but it's yeah.
I'm gonna give you a good tool for Infinite Horizons that's gonna screw your players for a little while.
Okay, cool. Freeman, close your ears.
Next time you get into a combat, right? Instead of taking damage, have the villain remove power shifts for an extended period of time.
Oh wow, yeah.
I didn't hear that. So,
you, you know, and they won't necessarily know it until they attempt to use the power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
oh man,
that's true. That's God. I think that something
interesting.
similar happened in Callisto 6. I think where they had like for a while. I think it was Bonnie Gordon's character Hops, who was basically reduced to like a tier 1 character for a while for like 24 hours,
Whoa.
and
You
like
know,
yeah,
Cypher system is all about resource management, and Power Shift's all resource as well.
yeah,
And people tend to forget that it's about exhausting your players' resources, not necessarily killing them, because that's what makes it interesting.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's one of the things that I like about Cypher that kind of helps make it that sort of cinematic experience, because in the movies the heroes don't die or else the movie ends, right? Like
Yeah,
so like having the mechanics around like the hit point mechanics be more about like the character's stamina and like their ability to like continue on in the fight, I think is really cool. Because it makes it seem in a lot of ways like it actually is deadlier than D&D, right? Because like with the condition of dead is dead, right? Like when you die, and it kind of makes it seem like, oh well, if you get exhausted to the point where you're in the fight, you can't really do anything. You can no longer avoid attacks. You're not healthy enough, or like you're too tired to like block attacks and things like that. Well, then you die. You make a mistake and you die.
look, you see, that's the big misconception when
Mm-hmm.
someone says Cypher system isn't deadly.
Right.
It's it's because they're not viewing it in the sense of a resource management game. They're
Yeah.
viewing it in the sense of D&D. Like,
Hmm.
you have these 3 pools, you have to exhaust these 3 pools. This is ridiculous, and if I lose my hit points, I'm dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
But who says that a character, a monster or big bad or villain, has to follow the rules of taking each point from the pool? Like, when
Right.
I do horror games, I'll have the character deal damage, not points, but knock you on a track, on a damage track.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it'll essentially remove your speed. Now you impaired without actually taking damage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways that you could since it's a modular system, there's a lot of ways that you could tinker with it to give you the same lethal feel that you would get in a D20 base game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that was one of the shifts that I made pretty early on when switching to kind of GMing Cypher, was the fact that like it is a resource management game. What you're doing when you're getting hit, when you're taking damage, you're not actually being physically damaged necessarily. It might just be like, oh, you dodged this attack, but it cost you some of your energy to do it.
Yeah.
And eventually when you don't have enough of that left, then you take damage and you die because there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
You no longer have your ability to dodge or to block or whatever. um, let's see. Geek Out says there are abilities that allow NPCs to move player characters down the damage track. That's true.
Yep.
There's one stat block in the NPCs section that I can think of that I've looked at extensively that it does exactly that, and yeah, it's terrifying. That's incredibly deadly for the players. Rose says,
But
not,
you don't have to make it permanent either. You can make
right,
it
yeah.
temporary.
Mhm. Rose says, not Cypher relevant, but I love systems where I can combine skill checks with different stats to get things like a strength-based medicine check or a dex-based hacking check. Yes, one of the things I love about Star Trek Adventures, that's one of the things I love about that system, is you don't have like skills in the traditional sense. What you have is a combination of like all these different attributes that you can sort of mix and match to sort of best fit the situation that you're trying to do, which I think is a really cool concept. So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, Rose. I feel that. Technically, the way that 5e is set up, like the way that if you like read the rules, like the way that it's set up, it sort of seems like you should be able to do that too, right? Because everything, you're not making an athletics check, you're making a strength athletics check, if you know, like,
Yeah.
and so that it sort of implies in that you should be able to like have a, I don't know, like a dex athletics check or
It's a
something
little
like
bit,
that.
yeah, a little more
You see,
flexible.
I would think that as a GM, if I'm running 5e and someone gives me a logical explanation why they should be able to make an intelligence athletics check, you know, like say they're climbing a rock wall and they've climbed this rock wall many times before, you know, so they have the pattern memorized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if they explain
Right.
it in the narrative, that you should be able to do it.
Or even go like a Sherlock Holmes direction, where like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, where it's
Yeah.
just goes into slow mo and then just like analyzes the rock wall, finds the weaknesses, finds the sort of structural
Yeah.
points, and then just like, okay, that's how I'm going to climb it, by analyzing it and finding the best path up, right? Like that kind of thing. I could absolutely see that.
Giving me some ideas.
I know. I know that I'm like you, Anthony. Like if somebody gave me a good enough argument, I'd be like, yes, absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, I always tell players, and even in our videos, I always say, as a player, you should be as helpful to your GM as you possibly can. And the best way of doing that is be descriptive of your actions. Because when you're descriptive of your actions, you might get benefits that you weren't even aware of,
Right.
just by you describing exactly what you're doing in the scene.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to kind of go off that, one of the things I really, really like, as I've said many times before, and Cypher kind of has this a little bit, but is especially with XP as a resource, is any game that has sort of like a bartering system between the GM and the players, like very recently actually, in Infinite Horizon, Caitlin was doing something and she like asked me a question. She's like, "Does this work? If I have this and this, does that mean that I get this?" And I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, "That's really cool," and I didn't think about that, but I kind of don't want to give it to you. And then I was like, I'm like, okay, tell you what, spend some XP, and I'll let it happen. I'll let that be the true, and that's I love that.
She could have did it without asking you, by having a player choose.
True,
Saying,
it's very true.
Here's an XP.
It's very true. But yeah, and then of course once the session was over, then she was like, "So does that mean that it's always gonna work like that?" And I was like, "If you spend enough XP to make it a long-term benefit, yes."
You know, that kind of reminds me of Savage Worlds a little bit with the Benny system.
Yeah. And hold on, what was I think the Doctor Who RPG also has something kind of like that with their story points.
That's cool.
And I would want to say that Fantasy Flight as well, with the light side and dark side points. You know, that you're able to spend something from a pool,
right,
in order to change something. You know, they also have that. You know, the whole Fantasy Flight Star Wars line, and Legend of the Five Rings. There's a couple of games that run on that system.
Yeah, I love that kind of like barter system with GM and players. Because it basically, what it does is it makes it so that like players still have that freedom to do whatever they want, but without it becoming like an anything goes kind of thing, right? Like they actually have to like think about it, and it gives weight to what they're doing, you know?
I love any game that allows the players to change the narrative slightly, because it keeps you on your toes as a GM.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, one of the reasons why I love the player intrusion and the effort mechanic in Cypher system is because nothing I ever plan is ever going to go 100% according to plan, because the players have the opportunity to change the narrative. Even the slightest bit makes it more interesting for you as a GM.
Absolutely.
It keeps you on your toes.
Well, and then as a GM, the GM intrusions also serve that purpose in a great way, because it means that I can sort of give some like low ball difficulties, right? But that doesn't mean that just because they succeed or it's a guaranteed success for them doesn't mean that something's not going to go wrong, right? Like, and that's always great to have, because like in any system, technically a GM can do that, but it feels bad if the GM has like just says, "All right, so you succeeded, but also you didn't," and like that feels bad. But at least with the GM intrusion system, at least you're giving them something that, or you're at least you're making it their choice whether to allow something to go bad or not, right? And if
I will say this too, that the GM intrusion is not necessarily bad.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
All a GM intrusion is a change in the narrative, and it's also the whiteout, right? We say this all the time, but it's the whiteout of Cypher system. If you're about to TPK your party by accident, you could always GM intrude to help them out a little bit. Like, you know, like if it's the first hour in a 4-hour session and they're getting hammered, you know, you could always throw in a GM intrusion to to aid them a little bit to move past the scene.
Mm-hmm.
When people hear GM intrusion, especially people that are fresh coming into Cypher system, they think it's like rolling a one on a D20.
Yeah.
It isn't the same thing. All a GM intrusion is the GM is changing the narrative for that particular moment. That's all it means. It's not bad. It's not good. It's indifferent. It's a change in the narrative.
Yeah. No, and it's a really helpful thing, because then what it does is like, and that actually even makes it even better, because what it means is that you can make something interesting happen, right? Like there's that like generally accepted, the common wisdom, like don't make your players roll for something that like doesn't matter, where like the outcome doesn't matter, or where the outcome is for sure, right? So if you have like a player who can reduce, like Caitlin, for instance, who can reduce a piloting check from difficulty 11 down to a 1, right? She can do that. Then like any check any piloting check that I send at Caitlin, she's gonna be like, all right, I got this. But the GM intrusion adds a way of making it so that like not just that you can make it go wrong, but also that you can make it so that like the outcome is not necessarily what she thought it would be, right? Like, or something changes, like, and I think that goes into the whole like cinematic thing that we were talking about before, like, and when you brought up GM intrusions for that, like that is one of the key things there that allows you to bring in that more cinematic narrative style, because it's not necessarily entirely based on what the dice roll.
Or you could go the other route as well, that there's an impossible task that you need them to accomplish to move the story forward, and you know that there's no way in hell anybody in the group is going to make the roll. Yeah. You make them roll, you have them fail, but you still give them a GM intrusion. They get panicky because they think it's going to be even worse after they failed, but they succeeded, but you add a different complication to move the story forward.
Yeah.
It's the whiteout of a Cypher system. Like if you make a mistake that you don't want to backtrack the story. This happened. It was like, okay, I'm gonna move the story forward, even though this happened, but you're still gonna accomplish your goal and get to the next scene.
Yeah, and that is a thing that I appreciate about the system, is that it's a system that doesn't really allow for a lot of like getting stuck. Yeah. You know, it's always like everything is constantly moving things forward, which is I don't want to say it's inherent to D&D, because I don't, like, on some level it's like it's the system and the GM interacting, right? On some level. But like in D&D, more often than in Cypher anyway, I often end up in a situation where like I'll present something to my players, and then they just kind of get stuck or bogged down in that, and doesn't really feel like anything's moving forward. And that
another example of D&D, it could even be the simplest task, but sometimes you ever have a group that they can't roll higher than a 5 no matter what happens. And so unless they level 1 creatures, and every combat's going to be difficult for them. Cypher system, you don't have that problem, right? Because in Cypher system, you could GM intrude away the non-important encounters in order to get to what's important. And you don't know how many times in D&D I've seen I know the DM just wants to make this is the encounter just to pass the time away, the first 30 minutes of the session, and they wind up spending 2 hours because no one can roll higher than a 5.
Oof.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's a rough time for everybody.
Somebody in chat said they spent 2 hours trying to open the door. I've been that guy that spent 2 hours trying to open the door.
Yep.
I swear doors are like a CR 20, 25 at least.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you talk to the In Too Deep group, and like literally episode 1, that is exactly the thing that happened to them. Like the rogue tried the door, didn't work. The artificer tried the door twice and then finally got in.
And you see the difference is in D&D, if the DM turned around and said, hey, the lock just falls off, you feel cheated.
Right, yes, exactly.
You feel cheated as a player. In Cypher system, right, the DM could be like, I have a GM intrusion for you. and the player takes an intrusion, and you be like, you feel the ground shake, and the door starts to slowly crumble, but a boulder from behind you is coming forward. So, like, the door opened, there's still a complication.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily feel as cheated as you
Right.
would in D&D.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a thing. And like a thing that I also do generally, it's not something that I don't call it policy, because you never know when there's going to be a situation that comes up where you're going to have to go against it. But like one of the things I've said to my players in Infinite Horizon is, like, generally speaking, my GM intrusions will not like if I give it to you after a roll, I will generally not take away your success from it. Like, there might be some times where that is what the GM intrusion is for, but more often than not, it'll just be an additional problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't think I ever take away success or failure.
Yeah.
I don't do either. I just add either a complication or a benefit. But
Right.
I don't think, like, I'll be like, you did this, but guess what? This other thing is happening.
Yeah. 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 So that's definitely like a thing that I think is important, because you, on the one hand, you don't want your players to feel cheated, either giving them, like, cheated out of a success or cheated into one, and either way, it's like, it's not great. It's not a great feeling either way. But
Especially like in D&D, if you spend 20 minutes to use the open door reference, if you spend, like, because you feel like that whole 20 minutes was wasted for nothing, and the GM says, oh, the door wasn't locked. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Oh.
That's yeah, because then it kind of, in that case, then it feels like, yeah, exactly like you said, like, it just doesn't matter, and like nothing matters. If that doesn't matter, then like nothing does. Nothing. It really breaks that whole, like, I mean, I feel like part of role playing games is that you gotta buy in and suspend your disbelief for a moment, and that becomes really hard to do when at any moment the GM just decides something happens. Just is like, all right, well, this happens, and it doesn't matter. We just need to keep going, because then it, like, cheapens everything else that happens. If the GM just gives you, like, a thing, then it's like, well, now everything else feels cheap, and like, why are we rolling for this when you could just decide that it works, right? Like, and then the illusion is broken, and there's nothing you can do to get it back. But
yeah, that's definitely a crappy feeling.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I curse on this show?
Oh yeah, no, that's totally
fine. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
I should have asked that before I cursed.
That's okay. No,
that's good.
It's funny because I saw a clip of from Vanna earlier today, where it was like her saying something like whenever somebody comes into her chat asking if her stream is family friendly, and it was just a clip of her going, no, not here, no. Like, just over and over again for like a minute. It's very funny. And I'm like, yes, I feel that in my soul. Is this family friendly? I mean, it depends on your family, I guess, but no.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh man. No, if this was a family friendly channel, we would have long ago been in trouble just by Caitlin alone. So
well, if you've seen any of our streams, you know.
Yeah.
we are a little rough around the edges. I think that's part of our appeal, though.
Yeah. That's our thing too. It's part of our brand.
I want to say this before we even. I remember when I met your guys 2 years ago. I am so proud and happy for you guys. I mean, from the bottom of my heart, Lucas, you spoke a couple of times. I'm so happy for the growth, what you guys are doing. I'm so proud of you. I can't say it enough. You guys built a really welcoming and loving community. And, I love to see that. I love to see that in the industry. And, I want to see more of your guys. Not only do your actual plays, but your Ramblemancy. I just like everything you guys do. I truly appreciate what you guys are doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Seriously, that means a lot, especially because you guys were really kind of the Cypher Unlimited guys were really you guys were the first ones to kind of welcome us into the whole
Hmm.
like content creation world, and like having us on your show kind of made us feel like, oh, okay, we actually we're allowed in here. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Like that was it was a good it was a good it broke us out of that being tentative, like tentatively walking into a room you don't recognize kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was, yeah. So it means a lot, especially coming from you. So I think,
Oh.
yeah, we are also very proud of this whole thing. It's a long time coming, but yeah, it's taken a lot, and it's been a lot of work, but it's been at every moment along the way there's been something that has shown us that it's worth it. So
I mean, it's like you don't do this for like money or fame or anything, because God knows we don't get any of those things. You, you do it because you like to talk, and you like to like you like to have different viewpoints out there, and your guys' voices definitely need to be heard, because your guys definitely have something to say that's unique. And from day one, I told you when I saw your first episode, I said your guys got something. Just keep at it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I'm just happy that you took whatever this stupid idiot's advice and kept on going forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's a
Oh,
so you say that, and it just really puts into perspective for me that we're coming up on what is it? Yeah, 2 years of Ramblemancy. Like
oh my
really
goodness.
soon, actually.
I can't even
In
believe
fact,
it.
we might even be almost. I think we're almost there. Actually, it was end of January. I
Nice.
think is when we first did Ramblemancy, or was it no beginning of February? So we're
Beginning
very
of
close.
February sounds more from yeah.
Yeah, we're really close to 2 years of Ramblemancy.
That's
that's
awesome.
that's unreal.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Wow. We'll have to do something special.
yeah. We should we should figure out the exact date. I think it's like
I don't know.
in like the first or second week of February. I think, but yeah, we'll have to figure out. Yeah, Rose, I agree with you. Time is nonsense. Time is nonsense.
That is true.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, thanks. That
Thank you.
really does mean a lot.
I-
It's easy to like when you're building something, like it's really easy to get like really just sort of like in the middle of it and not really be able to see the kind of the big picture of like
Absolutely.
what you have actually achieved, because you're like in the middle of
You're
it all
in
the
it.
time.
It's hard to like back out and look and see what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy
And
to
it's
take it for granted too sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
it's also scary.
Yeah.
You putting yourself out there and not
Yeah,
knowing if
absolutely.
people like what you do or even care.
Yeah.
There's my anxiety right there. Triggered.
Just Freeman and I just became the Spider-Man meme of like,
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely true, but it's amazing. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
In that there's some exhilaration. So
Yeah.
I love the bad reviews. I remember when we interviewed Shauna Germain from
Mhm.
Monica Games. She produced the consent and gaming document, so
Mhm.
she has a hate following.
Yep.
Like the old groundhogs can't stand people telling them,
oh yeah.
"Hey, you mean I gotta treat everybody equally? How dare you?
You mean I have to respect people who come to play at my game?
I can't have homophobic, racist slurs in my game. Who are you to tell me that?
Oh,
But
Gosh.
so when we interviewed her, we had not a ton, but we had a few, hate emails. And this one guy, I remember he said, "Look at this 2-bit interviewers." And I said, "Yo, we 2-bit? Yo, we was 5-bit a week ago. We moved up."
yeah, moving up in the
And
world.
it got him so mad. It was hilarious.
Oh my God.
Perfect.
See, I love that. That's how
Yeah.
that's how I like to address those kinds of things where
Yep.
it's like, well, that I'll take it. That's an improvement,
Thank
frankly.
you.
Like that. Oh God.
Yeah.
That's we've been lucky enough so far that we haven't had anything particularly like that. we kind of were having this conversation before stream, but yeah, we haven't really had too much of that happening, so we've been very lucky. But like, I'm simultaneously dreading and anticipating that day when it comes.
Absolutely.
Hey,
But-
somebody told us you don't make it until you have haters.
Right?
So
Yeah.
we got to get some more haters in our
I know.
side.
Oh, that's like when we the very first time we got trolls. Afterwards, I was like, "Hey guys, we did it. We're here."
We're here. We've made it.
You know, we got trolls in our chat. We got a bot in our chat way back, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're big enough for the bots." And like,
It was a good one, yeah.
yeah, exactly, Geekos. We get buy follower bots occasionally, but yeah, we we have a lot of their standard phraseology in the auto mod block. So, but all right. Well, that's kind of the end of our time for tonight. We'll just pun the trolls into submission. There you go, Rose. That's what we'll do.
Perfect.
And we know we have a lot of prolific pun mancers here because we actually have a command for pun jail specifically. So, so yeah, all right, but yeah, that's kind of the end of our time for tonight. Anthony, thanks so much for coming and joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Freeman, I believe you have our end of stream announcements and stuff.
Yep. Stay tuned as I get my notes. If I bundle through this,
All
just
right.
kidding, they're blank and I have nothing there. I'm just going to reveal that shtick is out the window.
Perfect.
So we're Rule Blower. Thank you for being here tonight and watching us. And if anyone out there is new to the channel, we have a few cool places you can go and check out. We have a Patreon. I like to start with that one. There are cool world building tiers on there. A lot of our world builders have already been doing really cool things in the Infinite Horizon universe, cool places, and I believe characters.
Yeah, we've had some NPCs.
NPCs, love them.
Mm-hmm.
Inevitable. Mr. The Inevitable.
Mr. the Inevitable, yes,
Yep,
exactly.
sorry. We also have a little thing we have, the tabletop tool chest, where we come up every other week. We come up with little story bits that you can use in your game or in your writing if you're writing a story. I think we are a little late this time, but I think it will be coming out on Saturday.
Yes, tomorrow.
We'll be doing. We're gonna push it tomorrow, so we'll drop it tomorrow, and also media end of month media club, which if you are subscribed here and you're on I believe if you're on the Discord, you can get the whole backlog of all that. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we have a merch. I know some of you have the cup. It's a really cool mug.
Oh,
I love
we
it.
Also have the Infinite Horizon shirts.
Oh, I'm gonna order one of those shirts.
Oh man,
Yeah.
these are comfortable.
They're unfortunately currently unavailable, but they should be stocking them back soon. So we'll see what happens.
I'll definitely order one when it comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're gonna be getting updated season 2
Yeah.
Infinite Horizon art by Caitlin Bruder. So it'll be awesome. And that'll be on I think that art is already on the stickers.
That's right.
I'm just showing all the stuff here.
There you
go. We have I almost said Ko-Fi. Sorry, coffee. You can check out our short-term goals. Toss us a few bones if you'd like. Bones. Who am I? And last but certainly not least, we have a Discord.
Yes.
Go and check out the Discord. We have a lovely community there. Go to general chat in the AM. Get your good morning and good zone. I love that so much. I don't always respond, but I'm always reading it, and I always get a really good feeling from it. So thank you guys in there. And you can go to our why am I blanking? We can go to any of the Discord channels, our Infinite Horizon, Into Deep, Ramblemancy. You can go and chat with us there. Yell at us in Infinite Horizon, I'm sure. I think that's that. I kind of went a little lengthy on those. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's pretty good. Anthony, go ahead and you can, if you'd like, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm Spiggs on every social media. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's Spiggs18. But more importantly, follow Cypher Unlimited. We have a Twitch channel, Cypher Unlimited Live. We do interviews, actual plays, and we do what we call bullshit talks, and we just chat about gaming. We're every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. or follow us. Check out our YouTube channel where we post everything from Twitch and plus additional original content. We interview people in the gaming industry. We interview content creators, Twitch streamers, actual play podcasts, you name it, we interview it. If you want to be interviewed and you have a product, shout us out because like Lucas knows, we love to highlight and promote people doing cool things in the industry. So just hit us up and we'll definitely check you out. Join our Discord. We have the largest fan-run Discord dedicated to all things Monica games. We have over 4,500 members. We have games being played every day. I mean, every day. Right now, there's a game being played on the Cypher Unlimited Discord server. So come and join. You can reach us there. You can reach us on Cypher Unlimited on Twitch, Cypher Unlimited on Twitter, Cypher Unlimited on Instagram, or join our Facebook group. Like Lucas, just check us out. We like to talk shit and bullshit about gaming. So if you like three idiots bullshit about gaming, we might be the channel for you.
No, nobody who is here in our chat likes three idiots bullshitting about gaming. That's why they're here watching Ramblemancy. Well, thanks again for coming. Seriously, it's been good to have you, and it's been a long time in the making. So it's been good to have you.
Yeah, I'm great to be here.
All right, everybody, we're gonna go, but remember that In Too Deep will be back on Tuesday, kicking off our week of programming. The VOD of the Q&A will be on YouTube tomorrow morning, so you can check that out. So yeah, hopefully we will see you then, but if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody.